huge MMO worlds. And how big is Ashes going to be? What was it? Some insane number?
Roughly
1,200 kilometers squared, I think.
1200,
yeah,
1200.
it's
Yeah,
30 to
that's
35
insane.
times the size of New World's map.
Yeah, that's absolutely insane. So that's just a lot. You know, even mapping
Yeah.
out points of interest or just landmarks. That, of course, the game. You know, I mean, it's just there's so much to do with that kind of a size.
Sure.
And the cool thing is it's technically going to be a live service. Like I don't want to use the term DLC, but I could imagine, especially with the phases, but I can imagine at the end of every month, because I don't imagine we start a phase and then all that content's ready to go and then it's in a patch, ship it. I imagine like once a month there being like a quote major patch, and then all right, now Naval's online and this is online, but we had to push this back. And I imagine like, oh, now this POI is filled out. This world boss should be working now. Hey, if you guys level the Winstead node to level 5, it should spark this story arc. And just seeing things slowly come online, especially around times where, the phases actually start, depending on how much things they have actually ready and sticking on schedule. Speaking of sticking on schedule, how do you feel about how long AOC has taken? You said you've been following since 2017, which I think you're a madman for. Like, what do you think about the development time, or do you
I
think
think
players are going to be patient and wait, or what?
I think it's normal. I don't understand why so many are put off by the development time. I mean, maybe it's just because players or gamers in general don't really have a understanding of game development or like even the basics. Um, Development time for especially for MMO is like a lot. I think ESO, for example, was in development since 2009,
Man.
at least, and then what launch was 2014, kind of. So that's at least 5 years. But even before 2009, they were still in talks of developing it and coordinating with Bethesda over the world building. So I think it's normal. I mean, 7 years for not just concept development or getting workers, QA. You have to build a legal department. You have to essentially build out benefits for the employee. I mean, they're not just building. I guess Steven wasn't just building a game. He was building a company at the same time, which
Yes,
is
true.
even more
And
work. So I'm not really like mad about the progression or the amount of years it's taken for Ashes of Creation to go from a website of ideas to a playable alpha too.
Sure.
It's just whatever. Like, but I think people in general just don't understand the game development. And they just look at 7 years and like, oh my god, there's nothing. It's a scam.
yeah.
Whoa. Yeah, sure. You know.
Yeah, it reminds me of well, everybody has their own opinion and that's fine and everything. But I remember I was watching somebody's video and they were talking about Ashes and they're like, yeah, most game development takes like 5 years for MMORPGs. And it's like, no, it's not. Like you just do a simple
No.
Google search. And they're like, well, yeah, well, and then he backtracked and he was like, yeah, it's like 5 to 8 years and they're on year 7. So, well, Throne and Liberty's on year 12 right now. Like there are a lot of big game companies that have taken years to develop that, like you said, they weren't also building a company and they started off with way more developers too. And it's just, I don't know. I understand people want like satisfaction now and everything. And so I think a lot of it comes from that. And then some of it is just, I don't like this company or I don't like this game for whatever reason. And it's funny to make fun of it, but
Yes. Welcome on in, Dank.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, go on.
oh no, I was gonna say, so we have Phantom X here. He does a weekly Ashes of Creation live stream, usually on Sundays. He's also a Phoenix Initiative member.
Oh, nice.
So he says he's been growing more, pretty much more cynical as like time goes on. And he also feels like development really started, like it's really only been a 3-year development. And I kind of always been under that same belief, so to speak, like that port to UE5, they essentially had to restart most things. Like obviously you keep some assets, you keep some animations, but that world from Alpha 1 is no longer being used, essentially. All those resources, all those dungeons, all that stuff, they really had to start over, it feels like sometimes. Um, yeah, he says he thinks there's other versions out there. APOC, yeah, all that time, all those resources, all that money spent on that battle royale, and for what? And I think the optimistic way to look at it is, well, they learned from it.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it's a lot of development time. But like Elsa and I always say, no one ever gave Throne and Liberty crap for taking so long. No one gave Throne and Liberty crap for being delayed constantly. Hell, it just got another delay. It was supposed to be out the 17th of this month. Now it's October 1st. But no one, you notice no one was up in arms. No one was like raging.
I
Like
was
no
not.
one
I
cared.
was not. Just
Like
kidding.
no one cares about Throne and Liberty in that sense. Whereas if Ashes was to push things back another month and everything like that, it'd be like, oh my gosh, what's going on? I've been waiting too long. And it's Throne and Liberty's had a longer development timeline, but I think that speaks to this game ambition to where you could say, like, well, people are more excited about this one. They're more impatient about this one. And yeah. BDO took a year and a half. Of course, I heard about this.
Uh, yeah. Look how well that turned out. No, I get it. I completely understand people's skepticism, and that skepticism is warranted given what we talked about in terms of the space and what it's like for the consumer end. Even for the developer end, it's not nice. But when we
Yep.
look at game development, I think it's really important to understand game development is literally a field of work where hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
It's very tricky. It's very finicky. Even the devs themselves won't know really what mistakes they made until after they do it. So,
Yeah.
again, I'm not too worried about the fact that it's taken 7 years, or if the real-time development of the actual game and its assets would have only been 3 years. I think if people really want a quality game, it's worth the wait. I think they are definitely feeling the pressure though, as I can definitely feel like, sorry, I don't want to say they're feeling the pressure. I feel like they're feeling the pressure right now.
I get that.
Given the announcements recently about Alpha 2 and the details surrounding Alpha 2, because there's a certain point at which you can't be like forcing which in this case not just consumers but investors in your project to wait any longer. So I think that's
Mm.
why they not only just delayed Alpha 2 to make sure not only technically on the technical end they're okay, but they also have to roll out in different waves because first they don't want to fail the technical aspect, but also maybe for the consumers it's just a way for them to build some more trust. Because if you get an Alpha 2 that had everything in it and none of it works, it's just that I think that would certainly have an impact on relationship with your
Yeah.
consumers.
Planendorf in chat goes, make best MMO ever, question mark? No pressure. Easy clap.
Easy.
It's easy.
Well, I don't think they even have
just go
to.
do that.
Yeah, I don't think they even have to make the best MMO though. They just have to make an MMO where one, it's not juicing the living hell out of their player base, and second, provides a reason to actually play it as an MMORPG. When I'm looking at uh, MMOs, I'm looking at them as in this context of why you want to play this with my friends for the next 5 years, 2 years, even maybe 10 years. And Ashes could be that, and that's really a big draw too.
Yeah, I really think it's
I
gonna
agree.
be that MMO. Yeah. Dank says, I don't think they spent too much time on the BR. They already had most of those assets made for the main game. It's 1,000 times less assets in an MMO. Oh, by far, yes, yes. BDO took 10 years. I'm sure development time isn't easy on Steven's bank account. Yeah, there's I mean, that's why they gotta reopen keys. Like it's gonna be a long development time, and it's gotta get funded. And someone said, guess what all those games don't have when we were talking about like, ESO and Throne of Liberty taking a long time, said
Okay.
open development. Do
Yeah.
you feel
Right.
like how do you feel about the open development affecting the project? Do you think it's helped, hurt, or well, I'll say I think it's a little bit of both.
It,
I
yeah.
think mostly it's only well, has it really hurt? I guess if you take too much feedback, I guess, but to me, it's been a positive thing. I want my next game. if there's another game that I have to follow after Ashes, I just like the concept of open development. I like seeing feedback iterated on, even if it's something as little as a lot of people were talking about how the fighter was holding a sword, and then they changed that the next stream. Uh, Feedbacks on combat, stuff like that. I just love seeing the
Mhm.
little things and having your input put in. I think we'll see a lot more of that in alpha. But yeah, what are your
It,
thoughts on open development?
it's certainly double-edged sword, depending on the project, or even depending on rather the project team. I think the way they've been doing it so far, for the most part, however, has been great because not only do they get actual, feedback about, whether it's aesthetics or uh, the UI or systems, but they
Mhm.
also are cementing or forming a relationship with their player base, which is really, really crucial, really, really important for keeping not just the MMO alive, but just a live service game alive. I mean, look at Helldivers 2 before
Yep.
things went to shit with Sony, right? I mean, the community management there was phenomenal. Is phenomenal. So that's great. That's one of the positives, and people will also get to feel like they're participating, especially when the game's not even out yet.
Yeah.
But it could also be bad too, like you said, if they take too much feedback, or rather the or
Mm.
rather try to get, I guess, delay development over too much feedback. But that's really up to them.
Yeah.
I will say though that kind of word is because I'm still like under NDA about it with the whole ESO class rep thing. I will say though, the feedback a lot of gamers or players tend to give are not like within the easy scope, are not really easy or within the
Mm.
scope of like development.
Sure.
So
Mm.
I think
I,
I think it's fine for the most part. I think it's like 90% fine, and
okay.
10% maybe maybe it could go wrong. You know,
That
because some people will have expectations.
I'm glad you brought that up. So one of my things that kind of I don't know if this makes me sound like the scorn ex-boyfriend,
Okay,
but some of my feedback of ESO was that I
okay.
felt like that the PvP player base was neglected, which I don't even know if
Hmm.
that's an opinion at this point. But I felt like the PvP player was neglected and they were just not given content or listened to for the longest. And then that that ex-girlfriend scorned me, and so I ran to Ashes with open arms, and they said, "Oh, we'll give you PvP. We'll take care of you. We'll have PvX. We'll take care of the PvE and PvP. We're gonna listen to you guys' feedback. We're gonna have forums. We're gonna like post monthly questions and get your opinions on things, and we're gonna interact with our community." And this is stuff that I just wasn't so used to. And like maybe at first I was like, how you get out of a hard relationship and it's hard to trust. It was
Sure.
hard for me to trust at first, but then they won me over, you know? But,
Hmm.
how do you as far as communication goes and as far as, like, the different development teams now, obviously, one is a live service, already actual playable game, and then other ones in development and open development, but what are your thoughts on the development teams as far as a comparison goes?
Developer teams between
ZeniMax
ESO and Ashes, or
yeah,
just
ESO and
or like
Ashes.
in general.
Yeah, I guess ESO and Ashes as far as, like, taking care or respond to their player base. So what I'm saying is I feel the PvP player was neglected on
Hmm.
ESO. And I felt like
Okay.
that's that happened for way too long or is happening for way too long. How do
I
you
th-
think a community like a dev team or like developers should respond to that? Like or do better, I guess is what I'm going for.
well, all they could essentially say in that situation was, "Hey, we hear your feedback." Really, they can't really promise things because at least for ZeniMax and the other entities, not just ZeniMax, online studios that have live service games or MMO projects, they can't really promise too many things. Um, they can just say, "I've heard your feedback," and I know that's frustrating to a lot of people. But when your company gets to a certain size and your product is, uh, for example, the highest grossing product ZeniMax Media has, so they're under
Yeah.
conglomerate, right? And when I say ZeniMax Media, I mean the conglomerate entity that overlooks not just ZOS, but also Bethesda Game Studios, and the other projects, or sorry, the other studios and IPs that are under them. So ESO is the highest grossing product for them, for that entire conglomerate, which is now under Microsoft. So they have to also pay back money. So there's a lot of financial things too.
Yeah.
Sure.
Financial decisions have to be made in conjunction with community decisions, and that sucks, especially if you're a gamer, because and it also sucks for the developers I've talked to over there in person about how they really there was one developer I talked to, Jeremy. He was very passionate. He was very kind, and he really took the feedback we talked about over dinner. And I don't get the sense that they don't want to not cater to PvPers even a little bit. I mean, they have a PvP update coming out, and we can, of course, talk about that too.
Yeah.
I don't get the sense that they're malicious. I get the sense that developers at that kind of size and level are kind of forced between a hard place and a rock at that point.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So they have to not only manage corporate expectations, but they also have to manage player expectations, and that's hard. And that's part of the reason why I think a lot of people feel, at least community management wise, for ESO or from ZOS, that it feels very corporate, or that they're trying to sell you things more so than communicating with you. And that's perfectly valid feedback too. That's perfectly valid to feel. And Ash is in a unique position where, Intrepid Studios is in a unique position where they don't have a product yet, really. They can say whatever, not whatever, but like they have more flexibility in communicating with the player base. They have the room to look at feedback. They have the room to look at to revise their game before it's out. Because live development and pre-live development is completely not the same.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I get it. But I will say again that their community management so far has been pretty spot on, at least coming from Steven. I mean, it's very powerful to have a company founder or a project lead be very public, be very straightforward, and say to your face, "Hey, don't buy Alpha 2," or "This is what I want," and relate to people.
Very involved
through gaming. We don't really see that a lot with many studios, whether it's live service or MMO.
Yeah, he's very involved with the community. You don't feel like it's a corporate board of directors. You feel like it's just another gamer who just happens to be freaking rich to make the game that we all want,
Yeah, but there's also a risk of that, right? So
yeah.
And it's that's basically it.
I got a comment from Planendorf here, and he says, I think there's work for any studio to do to coach their audience on how to give feedback. I think players often want to give good feedback, but they have very much the wrong idea of what good feedback looks like. And to be fair, how would they know? Because I mean, Ashes in general it's in a very unique situation, like we've talked about, where they're doing things in a much different way. They're able to do things that other big studios can't do. And to go off of what you're talking about with ESO Nefas, I mean, I remember at first my first annoyance at the time was like, man, they just don't want to provide anything for ESO. And then the more you watch their development, it just almost felt like it was out of their hands. And it was just basically like the people above them were like, no, we're going to okay this. We're going to okay this. Like you're going to do whatever you can within the confines of what our scope is, basically. And that's kind of what I don't play anymore, but I still follow, because if performance got better, I would come back. But I saw the big housing update, and the housing update was like the UI add-on, which is still good for console and everything, but it was like they were trumpeting it for a while, like this is gonna be a big thing, and it was just like, okay, well, I mean, it is a big thing for console players, but at the same time, it wasn't a big thing for everybody. And so it just I felt like for a little bit there, the community kind of missed on that, and then this fall they're doing this winter they're doing the PvP thing, and I saw the rumors on what it's going to be. We haven't seen the full details yet. I just saw the leaks on it, and I'm just like, it'll definitely get people to come back, but at some point, you wonder how much it's going to pull from populations of other avenues in that game, and how like eventually, like PvP itself just functions so much off of having a population. And if you don't have a population for PvP, people just that want, even if they want to, they're like, well, there's nobody to fight, so I'm going to go. So although it's inherently a good thing to provide something PvP related, I wish it tied in more to what already exists, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So in terms of the leaks, it seems to be a rather big update to Battlegrounds. Do you think that doesn't already tie in with what exists, or what do you mean?
I thought it was his own thing. I thought it was its own 8v8 thing. I didn't. If it ties into Battlegrounds, okay. But
it's
I thought
8v8 Battlegrounds.
Yeah, but I thought that's a
We don't
separate
know.
queue.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So from the outside looking in, I thought.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's like, okay, you can queue, like a lot of people that I talk to that are like higher MMR and BGs already, they'll wait 40, 45 minutes for a queue because there's nobody to play with. And so if all of a sudden there's 8v8, that's great for 8v8, but there's only so many people playing in ESO.
Mhm.
And so it's like, okay, you're going to pull from Cyrodiil, you're going to pull from Battlegrounds, and all that is fine. But at some point, like, the players will figure it out, is what I'm trying to say. But it just kind of felt like, okay, well, if it ties into BGs, that's great, because then you're pulling from the same player base, and then you can add it into that. But if it's its own separate queue, that feels like a miss to me.
Okay. Yeah, we could talk a lot about the Battlegrounds. They kind of confirmed the leak with today's announcement or yesterday's announcement or something, whatever. I also covered it in the video, and I kind of gave my thoughts as to why it makes the most sense, because Battlegrounds is, unlike Cyrodiil or even Imperial City, has a much lower entry barrier.
Yes.
So it makes sense. And also, development-wise, I mean, if they're going to go back and revamp or improve a lot of things that are already in the game, like they say they would, from 2020, what was it, 2? It makes sense. But also, it again really depends on what they offer for doing that activity, because as we all know here, they're very notorious for not being able to seeming to not be able to figure out a great reward structure for the game.
Yeah.
So I think that will really come down to if they can pull off incentives more so than the system itself, because there's no reason to really go into 8v8 Battlegrounds if you're not going to get anything from it, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same for Tales of Tribute, trials, PvP.
Yeah.
How do you
it's a
keep
very
that old
common
content relevant? Like you said, I want Imperial City revamped. I love that PVX that ESO had. It's just like, how are you going to incentivize? How do you make Telvar more valuable and stuff like that? So yeah, I'm kind of with that. Circling back to receiving feedback, Wisp in chat here says, think about the floodgates about to open with Alpha 2. As a community, we are going to have WoW, ESO, New World, BDO, Guild Wars 2 people crying to make ashes like their previous MMO. It's going to be a mess, excuse me. And that's a good point, where there can be a such thing as selfish feedback. And
Absolutely.
I really love what Planendorf said there, is like, how do you teach the community how to provide useful feedback? Because if we go to AOC Reddit right now, if we go to AOC forums right now, which, to be fair, I think AOC forums are, I'm gonna get some flack from this, but somewhat tame compared to other free opinion avenues that I've seen, I'll say. But how do you really teach your audience how to do that? I imagine in Alpha 2, there's gonna be some sort of form to fill out. I mean, you're gonna have your normal, like, okay, report this bug, report this issue. You're gonna have your normal ticket system. But in terms of just getting pure feedback, like, hey, the melee combat feels trash. In terms of providing that feedback, I hope they have like some sort of form, something you could fill out and like really be read by the developers and take into account. Like, can players upvote these certain things, or how does that work?
Yeah, I do think, just briefly mentioning feedback, because I want to hear Nefas's opinion on this as well, because it's an interesting topic about what they're going to do, and we're going to see it happen in real time. But I think a lot of what they're doing and what they've shown so far is they have a core tenet of what the game is. They know the direction of the game. They know what fits under their umbrella and what doesn't. And I think, and we'll see, we don't know for sure. We don't know if the temptations otherwise will convince them. But I think they're going to be in a situation to where if they get feedback outside of, like, as an example, that's very popular. PvE servers. They don't plan on doing PvE servers. So if they see something like that, it's like, well, that doesn't fall within the aspect of the game. Sorry, thanks for the feedback. We're just ignoring it outright because it has nothing to do with the current direction of the game. And then, but combat's different. Combat feedback on combat, on how great swords feel, on how the fighter feels. All that stuff is going to fit in within the core gameplay loop. And so it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Like everything we've seen so far has been very impressive, from my opinion. Like following other games and seeing how people, this development team listens and follows to feedback relative to other development teams and what they've been able to do. It seems like they're going to really have a finger on the pulse for that. And I'm optimistic that, when there is issues with things, it gets, corrected and iterated on rather quickly.
That's going to be very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot to unwrap here.
Sorry.
Especially as far as no, you're fine. As far as the two comments from your audience went, the first comment was about, what was it? How they give feedback, I believe.
Yeah.
So, to an extent, players or gamers are correct that they're not expected to have like innate knowledge of how game development works or how best to submit feedback or whatever. So that's really the onus is on the company to kind of tell people what they want specifically to get feedback on, rather than kind of leaving it open-ended. And kind of like leaving a kind of void into which people are streaming into. So that'll come down to the company. And on the second comment, what was the second comment? Oh god.
Sorry.
What was the second comment? It was something about
he said
the subcultures and communities about
yeah.
How, people are I think we touched
selfish
on that
feedback.
earlier. Well, yeah, we touched on that earlier though. With this is going to be a clash of different cultures and groups, and that's great. That having conflict is great, but where that conflict shouldn't go into is obviously feedback. So if you get murdered open world, you shouldn't be like removed PvP open world. No, of course not.
Yeah,
and
like, this is what you signed up for.
I really appreciate Steven's commitment to the previous kind of like concepts or statements that they have made since they started development on Ash's Creation, that this is their vision, this is what they want, and honestly, people should just look at that and be like, okay, I'll give feedback based on that, rather than trying to have them change the entire thing.
Yep.
And in terms of like how they give feedback, I guess forums or different types of feedback. You know how ESO, they have like feedback forums where it's like different categories. You can do something like that. Or they could look at forums, or if they really want to, and this will of course come down to their community management team, maybe make specific feedback requests, which is probably a more productive thing than saying, hey, what do you think about combat? Just be like, what do you think about this skill, right? This skill for this class,
archetype,
for this archetype.
To be fair, I would like to give a decent shout out to Intrepid's community team. They have done a good job, pre live service, pre Alpha 2, taking that feedback. So currently they have like their community managers, the community team under Margaret. They essentially take all the feedback from the YouTube comment section, from the forums, from Reddit, and they kind of summarize it, and they have literal meetings to where they give that feedback to the developers or the teams that it's relevant to. So I think they are good on that front. It's just about how do you start feeding. It's going to be different once the game is actually live, right? When the stuff is for stuff directly in the game, like, hey, I'm playing, like the example we keep saying, I'm playing the fighter, and for some reason this great sword, it just doesn't feel right. I don't like the weight, and then you see that all over YouTube, you see that all over the forums, and so like, all right, they're going to bring that to Steven, like, or the combat team, whoever will be in charge of making that decision, like, hey, this isn't just a one-off. I'm getting this. I'm social media man. I'm checking Instagram. I'm checking the Ashes of Creation Facebook, and the whole Facebook is just people annoyed with the greatsword. So how that becomes more difficult with the live service is going to be telling. But I want to get to I want to catch up with the voices of Verra here.
He had to step away real quick.
I
go to the bathroom real quick.
Yeah.
So I wanted to catch up with the voices of Vera here. Dank RNG says, on the bright side, the $120 paywall will keep out a lot of bad feedback.
I think it
And then
will.
Life and Stuff had said, plenty of people got money, bro. And then he said, for sure, but people will uninstall a free game 10 times faster than one that costed money, less investment. And then they said, good point.
Yep.
I think that's pretty. I think that's good. I think that's true. I don't think there's no denying that. And we can even tie this back to RMT. I don't foresee a lot of RMT with people in alpha. We were joking the other day on stream,
Alpha
but
2 RMT. Yeah.
yeah, like literally looked up. There's actually gold selling sites for Ashes right now, which is
Yeah.
crazy. But um, I think when you have to pay $120 minimal, or you got paid 250, or you paid 500, or if you're someone that paid 2,500, when you're that invested in the game, that feedback you provide, I'm not saying it can't be selfish or looking out or you trying to make it look like your old game, but when you pay that much for something, you are invested.
Yeah.
You are invested. Like there's no way about you're not going on the forums to troll. You're not just being overly toxic. Like you paid a lot of money. You're not trying to get banned and you really want to see this product through. You really believe in this game. This is even like a $20 box cost or a free game. Like this is a big investment. I know I haven't spent nothing close to this on a game. Like what?
Yeah.
Already looking for gold sites. Hey, I was curious, man. I just wanted to go ahead and start saving. No, needing to know how much money to save.
Yeah.
So I can help Intrepid catch those dirty RMTers. Yeah.
I know Copium Clinic and myself, we did videos kind of covering this about the entry cost, and you're absolutely right. I've stated this. I believe this, that the cost to get in really only attracts people really interested in the core tenets of the game. It's not 100%, of course. Not every single person is this way, because that's the second thing I'm going to talk about. But yeah, when something is a little bit more expensive, you're going to make a decision on, okay, am I going to like this enough to make this worth investing in? And it's the same. It's the same conversation we just had with Throne and Liberty. Yeah, I'm going to try Throne and Liberty because it's free. And there would have been a lot of people, if they did a free Alpha 2, that a lot of people not interested in the direction of the game for Alpha 2, not interested in what the game is. If it was a free Alpha 2, they go, yeah, I'll try this game that everybody says might be the next big thing. I'll try it for free. But they don't know what the game's about. And frankly, like those specific players, just they don't know what the core root of what the game is, and so they're not going to provide very good feedback to begin with. And so I do believe that the barrier to entry is going to help in that regard. But with that being said, you see it on I see it on Reddit, I see it on the Ashes forums, I see it on YouTube where people are like, yeah, New World changed. Like they're like, there's just some people that they're this is their belief. Ashes of Creation's the next big thing. Ashes of Creation wants to make as much money as possible. Because of that, Ashes of Creation will cater to the largest player base and do whatever the largest player base says, regardless of whatever their core game is. And there are some people that believe this. And then they will absolutely come in and, like you said, nice, they'll have their own personal interests of the type of game that they want to play. And they want to play, World of Warcraft, off branch 2.0 or whatever, or BDO, and there will be some players that will do that, and I think Intrepid will be pretty resistant to that if it doesn't fall within their core loop, but I think people are still going to try.
Yeah, man. I think I think there's no way around it. The barrier of entry will be just the price point is a barrier of entry that, like you said, not a lot of us have. When I go try Throne of Liberty, I'm not invested in that. I'll maybe I play for a week, I uninstall. If I don't like something in Throne of Liberty, do you guys think I'm gonna make a Throne of Liberty forum account and voice my opinion and hope it's heard by the devs? No, I don't care. Like, I spent $120 for Throne of Liberty. I'm like, well, god dang it, because it's a sunken cost fallacy almost, right? It's just like, I'm invested in this. I gotta force myself to play and blah blah blah. And exactly, and Nemesis said it well here. He said we don't want feedback that changes the core principle of the game, and that's it. Exactly. If I play Throne of Liberty a free game, I'm just gonna like, hey, make this like this or make this like this other game. Whereas Ash is like Else just touched on perfectly. you got to know what you're signing up for. Someone spent $120, $250 on something, they know they're gonna do some research. They ain't just clicking. Oh, I saw a cool Ashes of Creation stream today. That looks cool. Here's $250. But
Well, there's
you're
some
gonna
people
do
like
some
that though.
research. Yeah,
There's some
bro,
people
there
like that.
is. I'll be honest, because
The
there's
one guy
people
that
the
bought
day they
3 of 'em?
reopened. Yes, people bought 3 keys. There was some guy that was like, "Hey, I just bought the game. How do I install?" I was like, "Oh, like you poor soul, you poor soul." People really thought they were gonna buy a game and then be able to play it that game. Imagine, unreasonable in my opinion.
I was gonna this really briefly, Nefas. We've talked about this in the past, but it took me 2 years of following Ashes of Creation's development to buy my Alpha 2 key. It took me 2 years of following along. Roughly, how long do you think it was for you from watching your first live stream to purchasing your key? About how long did that take? If you want to share.
After Alpha 1.
After Alpha 1, so
After Alpha 1.
3 years roughly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm like, okay, they have something that could work. And looks
Sure.
interesting. Looks like they're committed now.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I think there was a statement by Steven that, hey, if this turns out to be a scam, it's like a refund. I'm like, okay, whatever. So okay, sure. Let's hold you to that. So I'm like, okay, I
Yeah.
feel safe enough to invest money into it. That's basically it.
yeah.
Learned in 2018, bought in 2020. Yeah, it was the melee weapon showcase for me, ranged weapon showcase. And I think that was, chat, correct me if I'm wrong, like mid 22 is when I got my key. Or no, October
Yeah.
22, I want to
October
say.
22.
And then the melee showcase was like June or so. And then I still waited around a little bit. Then I got it in October after I started seeing more and more. I was like, okay, cool. But yeah, we're not gonna hold you all day, Nefas.
Oh no, I'm
Free-
okay with sticking around if you want.
do
Phantom,
you got anything else?
Phantom X says backer number 3 for Kickstarter. Sheesh.
Nice.
That's
No
crazy.
way.
That's yeah. I've heard him say that before. I just forgot. But yeah, he's backer number 3.
I never knew that. What?
Yeah.
Number 3. Oh man, that I couldn't do it. I'm so glad I learned about this game when I did. Like, some people want to brag about being a day one, or like, oh, I've been following Ashes of Creation since Steven was playing it as a tabletop game and his D&D campaign, and I'm like, I don't think that's a good thing. I'm glad that I'm glad that I learned about it when I did, and that
Right.
because I mean, sometimes I sit here and I'm like, man, this game's taking a while, and then I think back to those Kickstarters, those original, followers of the game, and I'm like, dude, I don't know if I'd be in an okay mental state if I was you, or I don't know if I'd still be following month to month. And not to say
Sure.
I don't believe in a project or it's not great. It's just that seems like a really long time to be waiting on something. But hey, but hell, you heard Phantom in chat earlier saying the longer he follows Ashes, the more critical and cynical he's become. And I think that's why I'm glad I have, I found it when I did, because it allows me to have more patience these days. Still some criticism, obviously, where it's healthy, but it helps you retain that excitement. So yeah.
Yeah.
I get that. I do like that you guys brought up the financial entry barrier to
Mm,
Ashes, because we've talked about
yeah.
this too with some of my other friends. Because it's gonna be sub to play no matter what. I believe it won't be like free to play or here's a box price $10 whatever, get in and then subscribe. Uh, I think for sure it might keep out a lot of the more immature bad actors.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think part of the reason why the console population in ESO tends to be much younger. And
That makes sense. I never thought about that.
yeah, a bit more toxic because it's even if you do
Yeah.
get banned, I believe on console if you get banned, you can still come back on a different account, like on the same PSN and Xbox account.
Mm,
So that barrier of entry is like really low. Um, I don't know if a sub to play or even a $120 price for the alpha, whatever, is going to keep out bad actors anyway, like completely. But it's certainly
No.
a barrier for
yeah.
sure. So yeah.
I think it's a lot
Interesting.
less to filter through. Like I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a development team listening to feedback, and I feel like if you already know, like I watched their live stream from last January, they were like, yeah, we thought we were going to have 30,000 people for Alpha 2, and we hit 100. We hit 100,000. So they're like, we thought we were going to have a healthy amount with this price point, and we tripled what we expected to get. And yeah, you think about that, and you're like, man, if it going through the thought experiment of it being free, how many more people would they add? Like, would it, instead of having 100,000 players, would it be 400, 500? And like, just think of all the feedback you'd have to filter through of people that just, they're uninformed about the game. They're not following it. They don't know what the direction of the game is supposed to be. And they're like, hey, this is what I like. I like these specific things. I want, a PvE server. I want this. And, we'll see what they're just providing feedback because they're players and they don't know any better. And, it's at some point it could become potentially a waste of time of trying to like make your game better. And you're like, man, like 5 out of 10 or 5 out of 20 feedback things are good, and the rest just don't apply to what we're working on. Like this isn't helpful.
Mm-hmm. I think Alpha 2 is gonna be very telling of their team as far as taking that feedback and doing something with it. Because I think the first time, it don't have to be a feedback I specifically give, and say I say something and they change it 2 weeks later, I'm like, oh, that was me. I suggested that. That's what I said they should do. But like seeing other suggestions from the community and seeing how quickly they implement it. I know it's probably something simple in Unreal Engine 5, but like someone was telling us how in Alpha 1 people were complaining about the movement while casting, and they added split body movement to make it feel better and stuff like that. Just little things like that. How quickly they respond to feedback is going to say a lot, and how they handle like I said, essentially a live service is a big deal. So yeah. But I think we'll end it there. Appreciate you guys for being here. We could not do this without you, the voices of Verra. You guys literally carried the tangents, carried chat. We appreciate you guys being here. Thank you to No One as always. And of course, our special guest Nefas, who we will be raiding into if you guys want to check out his channel and everything like that. Are you still doing Guild Wars?
Yeah, I'm just chilling. I'm like mindlessly running around while listening to talk.
He's gonna be doing some Guild Wars too. If you guys want to listen to more of that voice that you guys have been loving, he'll be live here still. So yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
For sure. Else, anything for you?
No, I was just gonna say thanks for hopping on, Nefas. If you
no, thank you.
Yeah, if you have anything you want to plug besides Twitch, you feel free to do so. And yeah, we'll hope to catch you in Alpha 2.
Oh, absolutely. You guys will be streaming it, I think, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I do like that they're letting the NDA go, right?
Yes.
So it's very nice. But yeah, I appreciate you guys. And hopefully we can talk more Ashes and play more Ashes in next month, hopefully.
Yeah.
Which is quarter 4, not quarter 3. See.
Quarter 4. Why you gotta bring up old stuff? Why you gotta bring up old stuff?
It's not old stuff. They say quarter 3, it's so quarter 4. Anyway.
Hold on, let me Jedi mind trick. You never heard that it was quarter 3. That was never a promise. Oh, but yeah. Here, let me try to raid. There we go. Oh, it says I can't. I don't know why.
What?
It says we're unable to raid Nefas at this time.
Oh, weird.
What the hell?
What?
I've never seen that before.
I don't have any settings or anything.
I thought
could be from when you crashed, maybe.
You're already raiding Nefas. Mine's on the way.
Must be a UI.
I already am? Oh, okay.
No,
well,
I already am.
Oh, you are. Oh,
yeah.
What the hell? Then it is me.
It's probably from that crash earlier. It's whatever.
Could be.
Yeah. Let me try
this.
this.
My side's raiding over to Nefas now. I can't delay it any longer. I will. I'll catch you guys later on this week, hopefully.
See you.
Yes. And I'll try one more time to do it on my end.